Ida. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Brittany. Nice to be on your
show. Literally from the first day I started this podcast, I was like, Ida 10 has to be on it. And here you are. I'm so excited.
It's an honor.
Oh my God. That makes me feel special because I feel like it's my honor. And your episode, if listeners are listening to it right now, it's the first episode of 2021. And I could not imagine a better way to kick it off.
Well, I'm looking forward to our conversation.
Yes. Well, let's start, Ida, with your background. So, we love to hear the story of how people ended up in FemTech. We have a lot of students listening. And so where are you from? What did you study? Did you have a job before Clue? And tell us about that journey.
I was born in Denmark 41 years ago and living in Berlin. Been living here for 9 years. So I'm an immigrant. I went to business school, but a very unusual and creative business school called the Chaos Pilots, which is actually more of a social entrepreneurship school with a group of international people, but based out of Denmark. And I have actually been, I guess, an entrepreneur my whole life since I was 18.
Oh yeah.
I moved to London because I wanted to go to art school. And then I literally got lost at a university and ended up physically got lost and ended up at a course it was called Enterprise Management in the Creative Arts. And I didn't realize, but at the first day they asked me what my business idea was. And I was like, and I just said, crystal bead jewelry. Don't ask me why. And so I started a company doing crystal bead jewelry in London in 1999. And then after having done that for 6 months, I was like, I don't want to be in the fashion industry, but it was fun just to build a small business.
Yes.
So, and then I just always done my own weird sort of projects. I had a motorcycle touring agency for 5 years together with my dad. So we did high-end motorcycle tours around the world.
What?
And we did that because I grew up traveling on motorcycles around the planet with my parents and my brother since I was an infant.
Ida, this is the kind of juicy information I love having on the show. I'm not sure I've never read that anywhere about you. So traveled the world as an infant on motorcycle. I love it.
Yeah, so there was a lot of motorcycles in my life. And actually I spent 2 years roaming around the US in the sort of anywhere near a desert with my little satellite device and my tent, because I wanted to see if I could run my business sort of in a very minimalistic way. So that was a lot of fun. But anyway, at some point I realized that I wanted to kind of shift from motorcycles to female cycles, I guess.
I love that.
This question just sort of were stuck in my head of why has there been so little innovation in family planning methods since the pill came out in the 50s. I mean, it's a long time ago. We put people on the moon since then. It's like a really long time ago. Wow. And so, yeah, that's how Clue started. It came with this sort of impulse to try and do something in the space of family health, female health and family planning specifically.
And what year was that? What year was that?
So that was back in 2009.
2009. So we're going 11 years back. Yeah. Awesome. Yeah.
Because I was thinking women are not going to keep wanting to take hormones every day, or at least not everybody's going to want to keep doing that. And, the iPhone had just emerged and there was sensor technologies. And I was like, we have data. We could do something that was data driven in this space. And my first attempt was to try and build a home diagnostics to measure hormones in saliva.
Okay.
But then also knew that hardware is hard and started at the same time on the digital side. And then after 3 or 4 years trying to build that, we recognized that we were stronger. We were not the right team to build that piece of diagnostics hardware, but also strategically it made more sense to sort of go the digital route. So that's how Clue started.
Were you?
So me and
Were you influenced at all because of a certain stage of your life, or was it just in general?
So at that point, I was turning 30. And I had been in a steady relationship since I was 16, and I was getting really tired of condoms because I didn't feel well on the pill.
Mm-hmm.
And so it was definitely something that I wanted to build for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And people around me were like, can you build this really fast? Like, I need that
I need it
device.
yesterday.
Yeah, exactly. And then also having traveled so much in my life and seen so many women's lives all over the planet, it set really deep in me this sort of, or still sits really deep in me, this sense of women need to have agency over their childbearing.
Yes.
And understand what's happening in their bodies. That's how they can, advocate for their own health.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I love it. And that's why we do the show, right? It was because we try to just educate people on basic anatomy and basic, biology of women's bodies, because a lot of times no one told us, and then we think we're the only ones experiencing the symptom, or we're the only ones that feel like this, or, or what the hell is happening to my body, right? Because we're not talking about it enough. So, oh my gosh, that is incredible. And so you start Clue, you think it's going to be more hardware. I love the story of the pivot. If any founders are listening, pivot, all about that. Pivot early, figure out what's actually working, and be humble about what isn't working. And so tell us the journey of Clue, and what is Clue and where you are today.
Clue is a app that helps women understand what's happening in relation to their menstrual and reproductive health. Mm-hmm. So it's a tracking app. You can track a bunch of things, and then you get predictions and forecasts and analytics and a lot of educational content. Mm-hmm. And then we also do a lot of science collaborations with great research institutions, so that we make sure that the data that we collect also serves sort of a public good, of course, anonymized, and we don't make money off of it, but it's something we feel is important to move research in female health forward.
Absolutely.
And then we do a lot of content that sits on our website as well, which really is like a place to go to find information about anything related to female health that you can trust. We are very science-based. We care a lot about making sure that everything we put out is really sort of triple fact checked.
I love it. And so it's an app with all of this like super validated information on it. Are you helping women? Is your target customer like a woman trying to get pregnant, or a woman trying to not be pregnant?
So women go through this amazing life journey, right, of 40 years of having periods, more or less. Mm-hmm. And we really would love to be somebody that can take people by the hand and help them understand all these amazing changes and things happening in our bodies. So whether you are a teenager, starting out and just trying to figure out what is a period and what's happening, to maybe trying to figure out what type of birth control would work well for me, to how do I get pregnant if that's what I want, what happens when I am pregnant. We just launched a pregnancy feature, all the way through menopause. And then we also help people with information and various things around some of the common conditions like PCOS.
Mm-hmm. So it's a holistic approach informing on the entire journey of menstruation.
Yeah, it actually is. And then, female health is amazing, right? Because it touches upon sort of chronic disease and mental health and identity, sexuality, so many things. So we cover a lot of these themes quite broadly. And we've also done a lot of work for people with cycles that maybe not identify as female. Yeah. So we've done a lot of content for trans people.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
Just try to be very inclusive, so that we talk to all genders, and also really, I have a big ambition to try and include men into this conversation.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, because, we are interacting with them, and they're living with us, and they're loving us, and they're our kids, they're our fathers, right? And so I remember earlier this year, I was living in Houston, Texas, where there's a lot of oil and gas guys and startups in the energy field. And I'm talking about vulvas and periods and FemTech. And I had this one oil and gas like cowboy come up to me, and he was like, I have a question. Do you use one tampon for the whole week? And I was like, that's a great question. Even though on the inside, I was like, oh my God, oh, Jesus, oh God. I was like, aren't you married with kids? Like, how do you not know? But I was like, good question. Actually, no, we change it this many times a day, right? But there's some genuine questions that men have, And I know at FemTech Focus, we always try to have a voice of, compassion and understanding and patience. We're not angry feminists here. We are feminists, but we're not angry. We're educated and informed and compassionate feminists.
Yeah, I think that was a really brave man, and I think it's so important that we sort of take this whole field out of sort of the secret women sort of corner, but really make it just a natural part of life. And I experienced that many men want to be really supportive, and I'm really curious. And then I'd also like to add, a lot of the people who have the money that we need to build businesses are still men. The great engineers that you want to have on your team, they might be male. So I think that until men start really caring about female health, we won't see the kind of innovation and sort of growth that we really need in this space.
100%, 100%. I love it. And so can you tell us about where Clue is today? Like, how many downloads do you have? How much have you fundraised? Anything you're able to share? I know some of that you may not be able to.
Yeah, so we are 70 people or a bit more. In Berlin right now, they're all working from home, like myself, because of the pandemic. But we have raised money through various rounds from investors in the US and in Europe. We raised a fair amount of money. You would be surprised how much it actually costs to build an app and run it. So we have raised well over $30 million.
Amazing.
And we have 12.5 million active users every month. We don't count so many downloads because it's kind of a vanity metric. It really matters who actually uses the app today. Yeah. And then we also have several million people on our website every month.
Ida, do you ever just pause and be like, I did it. We did it. Do you ever feel like that? Does it ever set in?
Yeah, it's so funny. Not as much as I maybe think would be good. Yeah. I very often feel incredibly proud of my team. And also I should really say this, I built this company together with my co-founders and specifically my partner, also personal partner, Hans. And I could never have done this alone. So whenever I feel proud, I feel so proud of the team effort. It's really a team effort.
That is not just the best feeling as a founder. I know I love my FemTech Focus team. We have our team meetings on Fridays, and at the end, I always kind of feel like crying because I'm like, I'm so lucky. I have these amazing people.
Yeah, I relate to that totally. Yeah. And not just that, but also sort of in a historic context, right? When the pill were invented, people were, you were put to jail to even educate about about contraception. And I feel very grateful that I live in a time where I can do this work, and even get funded for it, or to do it. So yeah, I feel very grateful and humble that I get to do this work.
Oh my gosh. Well, Ida, I invite you to just give yourself a good self hug sometimes, because you did it. And that's amazing. It's so amazing. So Clue, fantastic, huge success. Cannot wait to see, where it goes, what happens next with it. I want to talk about something that, we have other fertility people on here, menstrual trackers on here, but you are a unique guest because you coined the word FemTech. Oh my gosh. Please take us back in time. When was it? Where were you? What was happening? How did the word FemTech come out of your mouth? What happened? Tell us the story.
So I had been invited to be on a panel for TechCrunch Disrupt in San Francisco in 2016, I believe it was. And they were doing the first ever panel on female health. It was early in the morning, not the best time slot, but it was there, it was a great first. And I was doing research to see who the other panelists were and what they were building. And I looked at all these websites and I saw, sort of language a little bit all over the place,
Mm-hmm.
but they still felt neighboring to what I was doing. And I thought, well, if I could think of a term that could make like all of us feel connected and like we were part of something greater than our individual businesses, I figured that would be really helpful to create awareness, but also to make it a little bit easier for male investors to say, yeah, I did a femtech investment versus, yeah, I did an investment into, helping women not pee in their pants, or,
Mm-hmm.
all these things that are sort of still difficult because of our culture.
Yep.
And then I did sort of mini user research at the conference. So I ran around to everybody that was building something in this field. And I was like, hey, I'm thinking about this term. Like, do you feel it resonates? Would you feel comfortable being sort of under this umbrella? Like, just trying to understand if it had resonance. And I got positive feedback. And then I sort of introduced this term on stage. And then it picked up. And I think I think it has been helpful to sort of help people come together, find each other, create language around what we're building, create interest and visibility. And there are people who say that, why does it have to be, technology specifically for women? Why couldn't it just be technology?
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's a fair point, but I think, it's just that that's not where the world is. I mean, the reality is that we are living in a world that in many ways were built around the experiences and preferences that 1/2 of the world population has had and have. And so when you want to do something that's out of that norm and specifically targeted, it's helpful to sort of describe that.
That's right.
Yeah.
So do you think the word femtech is still the right word?
I welcome any kind of innovation also in language. If somebody could come up with a better term, like or maybe we need even broader terms or more specific terms, or all of it. I think, I'll welcome, of course, anybody to be creative and bring out good ideas. For instance, I will say, when you look at the sort of period tracking space, there's still a lot of period trackers that really are period trackers. That's what they do. But there's also a few of us that do a lot more, where actually maybe that term doesn't fully cover what we are. But this is still what people search for in the app store. So this is still what we call ourselves. But in reality, we probably need a term to describe what is an app that helps women with reproductive health way beyond periods.
Yes.
And if anything, it should be called a cycle tracker, because it's not just
Yep, that's right. The blood is actually only one small component of the whole system happening.
That's right. Yeah.
Oh my gosh. And so, you say the word femtech on stage, and did you all of a sudden start to like see it in the news and stuff? Like, how did you feel like seeing other people say it?
I think so I should also again say my co-founder was like, we should write a Wikipedia entry on this and sort of, make it sort of more of a thing. And he did that, and I'm grateful for that. It was very helpful. Like I felt when I saw people using it that, it fulfilled a need. Like there was a need. I had recognized a need that was real. But it was cool. Like I met the woman who did the first FemTech conference in Delhi in India. I met one who put one in Hong Kong. I've been part of people doing it in Israel. Like this, that it's a global helpful term, I think has been cool to see.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, our name is FemTech Focus, and we have listeners in over 55 countries, probably more by the time this airs. And so, yeah, people, and I get messages on LinkedIn all the time from listeners saying, hey, I love your show. And I always ask, like a good founder, how did you hear about it? Right? I want to know what the channels are.
Yeah.
And there's lots of different ways people hear about it. But one of the main ways is I am interested in femtech and I like podcasts. So I just looked up the word femtech, in Spotify or iTunes, and you came up. So the word is like out there,
I think that's a wonderful story to hear, because that fulfills that purpose of letting us find each other.
That's right.
We did what we call a FemTech summit a couple of times in New York a few years back, because we wanted to bring together founders in this space. And that even that early little sort of thing, it made us feel connected and related. And And also it's a tough journey to be a founder. You need to
God,
feel that
it's
you
so
have
hard.
peers and people that you can partner with. And yeah, so I think actually I would inspire, if I could, somebody to take up the task of creating a global sort of almost like a trade union for femtech. I think that would be really interesting. And maybe it's already out there. Maybe I just don't know about it.
Can you tell me more what you mean by trade union?
Yeah, maybe I'm not a native English speaker. Maybe it's not the right word, but just somebody that can sort of create some sort of strong, unified voice of femtech. Like, for instance, a lot of people have problems with their ads being blocked because it's like adult content, like these kind of things. Like, if we had like a shared way of bringing up some of these issues, we might have a better chance of clearing them. So, but you could also imagine sort of, do we need any kind of standards? I mean, there are many industries where standards is really helpful. It helps us collaborate, or I don't know.
We should totally get a drink sometime, because I'm totally right there with you, because we've been thinking at FemTech Focus about doing like FemTech certified. You know, if you meet certain qualifications, like you can get certified, like, you know, like fair trade certified, right?
Yeah,
But you're
exactly.
FemTech certified, you know?
I love that. I actually, I've had a chance to talk to various people in the EU system and offer this idea of, what if we did sort of a good privacy practice certification type thing, and especially in health, and especially in female health, where we process this super sensitive data. And it has been and is a problem, I think, in our industry, that not everybody adhere to my personal opinions about what is high standards for data privacy.
That's right.
And maybe just creating visibility and transparency, and then people can of course choose to do whatever, but then users will know, you know, what they choose to do with their data.
Yep. I love it. Yeah. FemTech certification. And then also like a FemTech alliance of like there's not many of us organizations purely doing FemTech stuff. There's FemTech Collective, FemTech Insider, right? But if we could get together twice a year and like a UN meeting, you know, like we get together and we're like, here's the biggest issues, you know, and then we pick our top 2 for the year to work on, you know?
Now that you say like the UN meetings, so I've have had some contact with some of the big sort of global players in reproductive health and rights. And I think there is really like an opening right now where some of these big institutions are trying to figure out, how do we innovate in this space, and how do we start doing partnerships and collaborations with femtech companies. And that match is still sort of, where does that happen? It happens maybe in these thin little like personal connections, but if they had a place to go to have that exchange happen, I think that would be really helpful.
That's what I would love for FemTech Focus. I feel like we already do that. We make a lot of connections for people, and they come back to us and they're like, Britt, we now have a partnership. Oh, wow, we do this now, you know, we got investment, and, you know, but to really make the whole world know, like, we're a hub of femtechness, you know, and we have doctors on staff, PhDs, investors, right? And so we also are able to recommend companies that are high quality, right?
I think there's a big need for that. I mean, also all the big pharmaceuticals and corporates who's trying to figure out this space, you know, who do they go to understand what are user trends, what are user needs?
That's right.
And baked into that is the whole digital transformation, right? FemTech was born digital, but a lot of the people who need to understand this were not. So yeah, I think there are many tasks that kind of, ideally in my mind, or international organization could help with. But you know, I welcome you or somebody else, because like it's really one episode so hard.
70 employees, please take this.
Maybe.
I love it.
Maybe at some point. But I'm happy to have a drink with you for sure.
Perfect. Well, tell me, what is your prediction for the future of FemTech? And that could be the word, it could be investments, it can be, you know, we prioritize different phases of women's life. What do you think the future is?
I think there's some glaring gaps, right? No, there's a few things happening in menopause, and more than there was a few years ago, but it's still very open field. I'm curious about what kind of technology that will emerge that can help us look into the body on a more molecular level, and give us even stronger sort of signals that we can work with from a data perspective. I also think there is an issue with like both for an individual to actually collect all the data sets that might be all over the place. Like you have your running app with some data, you have your doctor with some, your period checking. So bringing that together and really make data work for people. Like how do I utilize my data in a health context, I think is lacking. And then also the convenience of how do I so how do I move that data around? And then I'm very curious about what happens when we start overlaying data set, like the data set of the cycle. If we overlay that with the data on, say, diabetes, like how do they inform each other? Or the data set of, I don't even know. I mean, it could be, shopping patterns. Like, I don't know, anything you can imagine. And it's sort of a lens that I think you can see the world through. And I'm curious how we would rebuild the world if we had that awareness of what actually happens to half of the world's population all the time. So I'm curious about that. And I think somebody's going to start exploring that too.
I love that. So I'm, geneticist, which includes a lot of big data. And there was at one point, I was really into this idea of contextualized genetics, which is what I called it, which is what if we took your genome and we overlapped it with your social media activity? And like, people are like, well, what would you find out? And I'm like, that's the thing. I have no idea. Like, how could we potentially see, like, based on your genome, your, shopping habits, the music you like, the, type of attitude you normally write with, because you could do natural language processing. And I don't know, there's just so many data sets that if we start blending them and stop making them siloed, we could crack some riddles probably.
I mean, just a question of how many more years can I have babies? I think that would be a good one. Like right now we're freezing our eggs, but what if we knew? And I would say in the same sentence, if we start developing some of these technologies, we need to be so strong on our ethics, and we need to have many more conversations about what world do we want to build and what role does tech play. And quite frankly, I feel we live in a system where money is the only navigation point. It's the only navigation point for people giving money to invest. And it's a problem because that means we end up in funky places. Like if you only care about money, you will build a monster. And so I'm excited about what technology can do in female health, but I'm also a bit concerned that we're not maybe spending enough resources and mind sort of energy on the ethical side of things.
Yeah. Do you think that if we get more women controlling capital, so like women investors, women GPs, that it decreases the risk at all for these like unethical practices?
I think diversity is a really good sort of safety filter because different people raise different questions, but fundamentally it needs to start with the limited partners of funds being okay with caring about more things than financial return.
Purpose,
of course,
right? Impact.
Like really taking responsibility. Like you are part of building the world. What world are you taking responsibility for building?
I love that.
And so it goes down into the funds, and then it goes to the partners, and then it goes to the entrepreneurs and the employees, and like it has to be the full chain.
Well, this has been so much fun, Ida. I have two last questions for you that our listeners love. The first one is we have a lot of aspiring entrepreneurs that listen, and they're always asking like, well, what still needs innovating? What should I work on? So what are areas in women's health and wellness that you think still need innovating?
So it goes all the way from even just the basics understanding. I mean, globally, there are still many women who doesn't know what a period is when they experience one for the first time, all the way to some of the stuff that you mentioned of like, what can we do with data that's like really advanced? I will say, trust what your own questions are, what your own needs, what are you seeing around in your community? Because I feel, somehow it's still more fancy to build an electrical scooter than to build a period tracking app. And I wonder why that is. So anything that can move culture, also important.
Oh, I love that. You didn't just like tell us what to build. You said, ask yourself, what are your struggles and what does your community need? I love that.
And trust them and be sort of take them seriously.
Yes.
Trust your own intelligence. I
Yeah.
think that's one of the big challenges is that you walk into that room full of males, typically white,
Yeah.
middle-aged males, and you bring something out there that's vulnerable, and they will be like, it's like you have to trust that you know something that they don't know. And if they're smart enough, they know what they don't know. And that's a big shift happening right now. People are starting to realize what they don't know.
Mm-hmm.
But often you have to be very strong in trusting your own intelligence.
Absolutely. And I, consult a lot of founders on pitching and fundraising. And one of my biggest, top 10 rules is never say, I'm sorry when you're pitching. I always hear women being like, they flipped the slide wrong or they said the number wrong. And they're like, I'm sorry. And I'm like, like you're the expert. You know more in that room than any of them, and then I became a VC and I did realize, oh, really, like you don't need to hold investors up on pedestals. You really do know a lot more than them, especially about your topic,
Yeah, it's totally true. And there is a really weird power balance. And there is also a weird sort of, why is it fancy to raise a lot of money? Like, it's just, I mean, we just live in a world that's very oriented around money. It's just how it is. And of course, we are all children of that, but just know what matters to you and stick to it.
Okay. Oh, I love it.
And also survive, also be able to make payroll. That's a challenge.
Get outside, feel the sun on your skin. You gotta, we're not all, mercenaries here. We're not saints sacrificing ourselves, right? It feels like it most days, but you got to remember to take care of yourself too, for sure.
That's super important.
Yeah. Our last question is, as of right now, the FemTech industry as a whole, what do you think we need the most right now in order to be successful and move forward?
We need a lot of people in the beginning of the funnel to have the courage to make that first really important decision of like, yes, I am going to start and become an entrepreneur. And then we need a lot of support at the other end of the funnel so that we can take something that's successful and put real money behind it so that we can make it huge.
I love it. Absolutely.
Actually, we need everything in between too. But these two come to mind.
Yeah. I know every single stage needs it too, but I'm really excited about how many university grad students listen to this, because I feel like that is the pipeline coming up, right? They're like, we're coming in. But I totally agree with you. We need the M&As, mergers and acquisitions. We need that the sellers, because we can't get it clogged either halfway through. We got to get the exits out there too.
Maybe one thing of sort of, I would say, you don't have to do this alone. That's another thing. We often think about the founder, but this is such a team effort, and find peers, be a group of people, even just one other person. Like, don't be alone in this. If you have an idea, get the first person excited about it, and be two. That's helpful.
That's right. That's right. I mean, we just said like our teams are our biggest assets, That's amazing. It is sometimes really hard to find the right business partner. I've had bad business partners in the past, so I know how bad it can hurt as well to have someone on your team that you're just like, why have I done this to myself? But when you find the right business partners and the right team, it makes all the difference. It's incredible. Well, Ida, you are amazing. I am so glad we're kicking off 2021 with Ida Tin, the woman who came up with the word FemTech. Who knows where the word will go? Who knows if it'll stick forever? But all I know is that we needed a word that brought us together. We needed a word that people could search in Spotify to find the show, right? And we're here. So thank you so much for all the contributions you've made to the industry.
It's my pleasure. Thank you so much for having me. And good luck.